Hello, I hope you're enjoying Excel Virtually Global 2025. We've had some interesting demos already, haven't we? My name's Kathryn Newitt and I'm a Senior Manager at Some Product. I write the Power Query blog and I produce training in Power Query. And more recently, I've been looking at Python and Excel to see what that can do. So I decided that this year, my session would be all about an Excel challenge being solved, first of all, with Power Query and then with Python and Excel. And we'll have a look at how they deal with it differently, and then we'll use them together. So let's get started. First of all, I'll have a look at the challenge. Then we'll have an overview of the kind of Power Query functionality I'm going to use. I'm not going to cover everything about Power Query. I just want to focus in on the particular M code that we're going to be using for it. Then we're going to solve the task with Power Query. Then I'm going to move on to show you a little bit more about Python and Excel because I know not as many people are familiar with it. And we'll look at the particular functionality that I'm going to use. Then I'll go ahead and solve the task with Python and Excel. We'll have a little look at how they've dealt with it differently. We'll look at how they behave differently as well and why they need each other. So we'll finish off by using Power Query and Python and Excel together. So let's get going by looking at the challenge. So this is the workbook that I'm going to be using for this demonstration. The main pages that we're interested in are the table data, the challenge PQ and the challenge pi. So let's start off by having a look at the table data. It'll be quite familiar to most of you. This is some of the bike information from the AdventureWorks database that I've downloaded onto a sheet here. This is actually arranged in a table format. So as you can see, if we go to table design, it's called table Excel data. So this is what we're going to be using as part of our comparison for the challenge. There's about 74 rows here, so it won't take too long to do the processing. So if I go to the Power Query challenge, this is the main challenge question that we're going to be doing for both Power Query and Python and Excel. We've got a list of products here. These products are all on the data table that we just looked at. And the challenge is, we'll just ignore this first sentence for a moment, to find out which product is missing here that is on the Excel table that we just saw. And then we're going to display the information from the Excel table for that product. So not too hard a challenge. However, if you've used Power Query in the past and you haven't tried it recently, you might think that without changing the data range into an Excel table is something of a challenge. Because as you know, if I was to click on the data and right click, this would get data from table range. Let's just see what happens when I do that. It's creating a table. So I don't want to do this. I'm going to have to do it a different way, and I'm going to show you how we get around that in a moment. It won't work in all versions of Excel. I've got a beta version of Excel. I'm not sure where this change came in, but I'm going to be using some new functionality that's now available to achieve this. So let's get started with the Power Query challenge. So let's just have a look at the features of Power Query we're going to be using for this example. We're going to be using the connectors, both to connect to the data in the Excel sheet and also to data in an external Excel workbook, as I'll show you in a moment. We're also going to extract and transform data. We're going to be merging data. And we're also going to look at an alternative method that doesn't involve merging, where I use list functionality. And then finally, we're going to load the results of both the merge data method and the list functionality method, just so we can compare what's happened. So let's look a little bit more about how I'm going to use each method. For the merge query method, if you're not familiar with merging in Power Query, you can create a new query or you can add data to an existing query using merging. And it joins two queries using a common key with the same data type. So that means rather than append, where you're adding data to the bottom of your existing data, so you're adding extra rows, you're actually generally adding columns. Although this example is a little bit unusual because we then delete the column, as we'll see. You choose the join type to suit your scenario. So if you're trying to get extra data to join the data you've got on your existing query, then you'll use a left outer join. You can also use right outer joins. And when you're thinking of left and right, it's a little bit like you're watching a university challenge. It's actually the left query is the one at the top and the right query is the one at the bottom. The reason we call them left and right is because traditionally in programming, that's how we refer to the first and second queries. But the important thing to realize for this particular method is that you don't need any M code knowledge at all. You just need to follow the user interface and do the steps that way. Now let's look at the other method. This is a little bit more complicated if you're not familiar with M code. In the second method, we're going to add a custom column which uses the list contains any functionality. Now this method, rather than adding your data together, it's actually going to check a condition to decide which data we're going to show for the solution. Now this method can be faster than the merge method, although it will always depend on your particular setup and you should always test it to be sure, particularly when you've got quite a lot of data. As I've said, you do need some knowledge of M code to be comfortable with this solution. You can't just do it with the user interface. So let's go and solve the challenge using Power Query. So here I am back in the workbook on the challenge Power Query page. I need to get the data from this data range and also from the table. And the first method I'm going to use is to merge the data when I get into the Power Query editor. So let's do the easy one to begin with. Let's go and get the table data. So I'm going to click in the table data tab, select anywhere in the table and then right click. And then we get data from table range. Because it's in such a good format, there's not an awful lot I need to do with this. I can see I've got all my data here, which is fine. So what I need to do at this point is just to close and load to, because I want to create this as connection only. I've already got it in the workbook, I don't need it again. So I'm just going to create a connection at this point. Click OK, and now my queries and connections pane is opened. So now I've got my table Excel data query. That was the easy part. Now let's go to the other sheet again, the challenge Power Query sheet. Now I didn't want to use the method where I just go and get it from the sheet. So instead what I'm going to do is treat it like an Excel workbook. So if I go to data, get data. Now I'm going to look at this get data preview. As I said, I've got a beta version of Excel, so I've got access to this. So let's have a look at what this looks like. So as you can see, they've been busy updating the way you can get to your data sources from Excel. So in here, we've got new sources. We've got home, which is where we are now. So we've got 3 tabs and we've got a one-lake catalog as well. I haven't actually got anything in here at the moment, which is good because you can't send in my company data. I'll just click on the new tab as well so you can see how it's set out. So as you can see, we've got lots of connectors here. We've also organised it into different tabs to help you find your source more easily because there's an awful lot of connectors now. So you can see you've got Microsoft Fabric, you've got Power Platform, you have Azure, and you have online services, so you can get to those quite quickly. We're actually going to use File, and I'm going to use the Excel workbook. As you can see, I've already set this up so it goes straight to my current workbook. I'm in the right location. So if I click on this, what I'm going to get is not the version of the workbook I'm currently working on, but the last save version. Now, if you've been used to using Power Query in the past, what used to happen if you tried to open a document and then link to it with Power Query, it would tell you that it couldn't use it because it was already open by another source. Now it doesn't give you that error anymore, as I discovered during training while I was demonstrating this. So now you can actually get into documents while Power Query is accessing them. But what it will do is it will take the last saved version. So if I take this and then import, you'll see that I don't actually get any errors. It just treats it like another external document. So here you can see I've got a whole load of sheets that we see already. And I've also got some named ranges that I've set up as well. So I'm just going to show you, because I've said it's going to look at the one I've last saved. Let's see what happens if I add another sheet to my current workbook. So I'm just going to add a sheet just by adding on here. It doesn't really matter what it's called. And we don't really mind what this is. So this at the moment is sheet 1. Sheet 1's as good as anything. So now I'll do it again and look out for sheet 1 appearing on the list. So I go back to data and get data. I'll stick with my get preview because it's so pretty. I'll use the Excel workbook from here and we'll get it again. Import. And now we'll see all the sheets that are available. Now, if you notice, sheet 1 is nowhere to be seen because it's not getting what I'm currently doing, it's getting what I've already saved. So this is how they've managed to make it work. Whether it's a good idea, well, the jury's out on that one, but I'm just showing you what it's capable of doing. So we've got our table Excel data that we've already imported. And the next thing I'm going to need is my challenge PQ. So let's go and get that. As you can see, it's the sheet, so it's got the titles on it as well. So I have a bit more work to do with this transformation. So let's go and get it into the Power Query editor by clicking Transform Data. So we're back off to the Power Query editor. Now, most of the columns that you can see here, I'm not actually going to need to use. All I need is that list of data. Now, I happen to know that's on column 6 because, believe it or not, I have actually practiced this. So here we are, there's the data in column 6. So before I get the data on column 6, I'll just have a look at what Power Query has done already automatically for me. It's decided to promote headers, which obviously hasn't had a great deal of effect. So I don't really need these steps. I can just delete the change type step, delete the promoted header step. The navigation's fine, that's getting to the correct sheet. You can see it's found the sheet and it's gone to challenge PQ. So the next thing I need to do is get hold of column 6 and just remove everything else. And now you can see that this is actually a reasonably flexible way of doing it, because even though my data is not in a table, it will take the whole sheet. But what I definitely won't need each time is these rows at the top. So the next thing I'm going to do is to remove some rows. So I'm going to remove the top rows. So I need to remove the first 9 rows. Click OK. And then the next thing I'm going to do is just promote the headings because products is supposed to be in the headings. So let's just head off to promote headings. Use first row as headers. And then it'll create my promoted header stop. And there's my change type again. So it brings that in automatically according to my settings. So I've created my 2 queries. So I can now do the next step, which is to find out what is on table Excel data that isn't on products. So let's do that. Now I know I need to bring back data from table Excel data. So I'm going to start with this query and then I'm going to link to the other query from here. So if we go to merge queries, I don't need to merge as new because I don't need this for anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the product. So I click on product because I know I'm going to need that. And then get the next one, which is challenge PQ. So I'm going to link to product on here as well. As you can see, we've got some results going on here. But I don't want to get everything that links. I want to get the things that aren't linking. So if I go to my join kinds, I actually want to find everything that exists only in the first. So I actually want a left anti-join. So I'm going to click on this. And now that's telling me it excludes 6 to 9 of 75 rows, which is what I want. So I click OK. And now you can see that I've got the data that I need from table Excel data, and I've got this extra challenge PQ. Now this is not going to be a lot of use to me because these are the ones that aren't on there. So if I click in the white space next to it, you can see I've just got nulls in here. So I can go ahead and delete this or remove, however I want to do it. And now I've got my data to put back. I can now load this onto the challenge sheet and this will give me my answer. So that was a really quick way of doing it. So let's go to close and load 2 again so that I can put it wherever I want to. And here it is. It took a couple of seconds to appear there. So I'm going to click on only create connection because this is actually looking at the connection for challenge PQ. I'm going to make sure I don't load that to the workbook because I don't need that in there. So I'm going to click OK. That's connection only. I'm going to get rid of this sheet because I only created it to prove a point. So I'll just go ahead and delete this. Yes, I think that's fine. And now if I go back to the challenge PQ sheet, I'm going to load this data. So it's actually the table Excel data query that I need to load, because that's the one with all the answers in it. So I'm going to right click on this and change the load settings for this particular query. I'm just going to move this across so that we can see what we're doing. I'm going to create this now as a table in the existing worksheet. I don't think I want it on the top of the breaks. I'm going to put it here so that we get our data underneath the challenge question. So now I'm going to click OK. And there's my data. So that's the first method, that's the merge method. It was quite quick for the amount of data that I've got, but let's look at the alternative method, which is doing this using the list functionality rather than the merge functionality. I'm going to go back into the Power Query editor, just double click on one of these, and I'm going to take duplicate copies of both of these queries. I'll start off with table Excel data. I'm going to take a copy of this, and then I'm just going to remove the steps because I don't want to have the merge in here now. So we're back to the way it started, and I'm just going to call this list, I think. Okay, so that's that one ready. Now I'm going to do a similar thing with challenge PQ. I'm going to do something else to this. So I'm going to duplicate this one as well, just so it's as it would be coming in from the sheet. And I'm going to rename this as well to list. Okay, so I've got this. And now I'm going to make it into a list. So I've got at the moment a single column, so it's easy enough to convert it to a list. I need to go to the Transform tab. And right in the middle of here, if I select the column, it will work even better, we've got Convert to List. So that takes away the title, which we don't actually need because we're not merging anymore. And now we've just got a list of items. So as before, I'm going to start in the table Excel data because that's the data that we want to bring into the workbook. And this time I'm going to create a custom column. So I'm going to go to the Add Column tab, and I'm going to create a custom column. I think I'll call it Missing. We're going to use this column to decide which rows we want to keep. So I'm going to use the functionality that we discussed. So I'm going to use if list contains any. Probably better if I just have the one eye. List dot contains any. It's a good one to watch out for. It likes doing that with the IntelliSense. If list contains any, open brackets. And now I need to enter the name of my list. So it's challenge. And it'll find it for me. There we go, challenge PQ list. And now I need the column that I'm comparing the list to. So we're going to see if the elements in this list occur on the column, and the column in this case is product. So I need to enter the correct syntax. So I begin with curly brackets, and then I'm going to do the name of it, product. So there we go, it's found product for me. So now I've got the right name. Will it give me 2 square brackets? Yes, it will. It's not very clever, this thing, is it? So I've got product, and now I need to close my curly brackets. Now we need to make sure we close the bracket here. And now we need to say what's going to happen. And if it is found a product, we just want to give it the name of the product. And if it doesn't exist, we just want to do nothing. So we'll say else null. Okay, and now it's saying no syntax errors, which as we know is completely trustworthy. So we're going to click OK here. And now you can see I've got a few nulls here. I'm just going to filter and keep my null values. So let's go into the filter, take off select all, include null, click OK. So we've achieved the same result, but without having to merge the data. So if you've got huge data sets, this would probably be quicker. So I'm just going to get rid of this column now, similar to the other case. We don't need to keep it. And now we can load this and just compare them if we want to. Notice I haven't actually bothered with sorting the data. We're just trying to prove that we've got the same data coming back. So I'll just go and I'll load 2. Close and load 2, because I don't want to create lots of extra sheets. Create them all as a connection initially. And now we're going to take table Excel data list and load this on the same sheet. And we'll just put it here. Just want to put it on breaks every time, doesn't it? Oh, that's probably too close. We'll click there. There we go. And now we can see that we've got the same data from both methods. So that's the Power Query approach to this. Two different methods. Which one you choose to use will depend how comfortable you are with MCode and also how much data you've got. Because if you've got an awful lot of data, you might find it much quicker to do the list method. So that's the Power Query solution completed. Now let's go back and look at how we're going to approach it with Python and Excel. Since more of you will be less familiar with Python and Excel, I'll run through a little bit more about the background to it. So let's start with why use Python. So Python's a very popular language. It's a general purpose programming language. And what this means for you is that you can do pretty much anything you want to with Python. It's very flexible. It's easy to learn, and lots of people learn it at school, which means that a lot of people do know little bits and pieces of Python, so they've got a starting point. It's open source, which means that you can share code without worrying about having to pay licenses or any of that sort of thing. It's also portable between platforms, which means that you can take a chunk of code that's been written for a standard Python platform and apply it to Python and Excel with a few little tweaks here and there, but very few changes. And you've got a really good chance of just being able to Google the kind of code you need just by looking for other people that have come up with similar challenges. There's an extensive set of libraries of code. They're all free to access and they've all been created by people in different areas. So you've got scientific libraries, you've got visualization libraries, you've got data analysis libraries, machine learning, and we're going to look at some of those libraries which are preloaded into Python and Excel, but you can load most libraries you want to load as long as they're supported by Anaconda, because that's who Microsoft are working with to produce Python and Excel. So it's an excellent tool for data analysis because it's been used by lots of people to create amazing data analysis visualizations and algorithms, which you can just tap into because it's all been done for you. So let's move on to why use Python in Excel. Now, I'm not going to argue against any other apps that use Python that you can use with Excel. I'm just going to concentrate on the positives of using Python and Excel here. With many 365 licenses, it's actually free to use at the base level. It's native to Excel, so you don't have to load anything else. And it has preloaded libraries. So if you have a look at this image on the right, you can see that these are the libraries that are currently preloaded. So we've got NumPy, which is obviously good for your calculations, your numeric calculations. We've got pandas, which we rely on quite a lot for Python and Excel because we use the pandas data frame to store Excel data. We've got matplotlib, pyplot. This is the main mapping tool. So this creates some great visualizations that we'll have a little look at when we put the two together. We've got stats models, which, as the name suggests, is great for statistics. And we've got Seaborn, which is more specific kinds of plotting. It's based on matplotlib, and it does a lot of statistical plots and that kind of thing. And then Excel at the mornings are pretty obvious. With Python and Excel, you can go beyond what your normal capabilities in Excel are, and you can perform advanced data analysis. And you can create visuals that you haven't been able to achieve easily in Excel. I know Liam likes to say that everything's possible in Excel, but some of the visualizations that you'll see are not so easy to create. For example, you might be able to create a heat map with a lot of conditional formatting in Excel, but it's quite easy to do with Python. And Python can currently process up to 100 megabytes of data at a time in the cloud, so it's very quick to process your work. The Python and Excel that I'm going to be using today is the base level Python and Excel. But if you do find you need things to happen more quickly, quicker processing times, different calculation types, then you can buy a Python and Excel add-on as well. But I'm not going to cover that in this session. You can look that up if you're interested. So to access Python and Excel, there's three main ways you can access Python and Excel. The first way is the way that is designed for beginners, and that's to use the Insert Python tab. And if you use the Insert Python tab, it gives you access to a Python and Excel pane where you've got a number of templates and walkthroughs that you can go through when you're first starting out with Python and Excel. Another way, which is what you tend to use when you're a bit more used to it, is to just type py in a cell and then select the new py function, which is the Python function. And then that will then convert the cell into a Python cell and you can start entering Python code. And the third way is to use the Python editor, which you can do by clicking on the editor in the Python section of the formulas tab. And that will also take you to a pane, but this time it's the Python editor pane where you've got an environment where you can create longer pieces of Python code. So let's look at the kind of Python code we're going to be using for this example. So we're going to use the Excel function, it's a Python function, and it's used to extract Excel data into pandas data frames. And pandas is one of those libraries that's preloaded into Python and Excel. We're going to be using pandas a lot for this example because I'm trying to keep it simple and just do it in steps. We'll look at slightly more complicated code later when we do Python and Excel and Power Query together. But for the first example, we're just going to keep it in steps, nice and simple. So we're going to start off with pandas merge to join the data. It doesn't work quite the same as the way it does in Power Query, as we'll see. So we'll be able to take our pandas merge and then we'll be able to drop some of the rows from that. So we're just left with the rows that we want. And then we'll drop again to display it in the format required in our final solution. So that's the features we're going to use. So let's now go and solve our challenge using Python and Excel. So before we move on to the challenge with Python and Excel, let's just have a look at how you access Python and Excel actually in the workbook. So as I said, everything is on the formulas tab. So on here, we've got this Python section. We've got the insert Python that we talked about. That's generally the one you use when you're getting started, gives you some extra help. We've got the typing into a cell where you can enter it into the formula bar. And then we've got the editor up here as well. So let's have a look at those in order. So if I click on Insert Python, you'll see this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. You get an offer to do the Python and Excel documentation. You can look at templates. There's a little filter you can use here. So I have different samples. So you can look at all tips or you can look at get started. So I'm looking at getting started there. If I go to the tips instead, then we can have a look at the different things we've got there. So it's things like creating a scatter plot when you're getting a little bit more advanced, or if you want to do something to impress upon people that you need to be able to use Python and Excel. So that's a separate pane that opens. I'll just close the queries and connections for now as well. It's also marked my current cell as a Python cell, but I'll just close this for now. If I wanted to create a Python cell, so say I wanted to create a Python cell over here for some reason in cell P10, I could simply start by typing Python code in, but first I have to tell Excel that this is going to contain Python code, otherwise it's not going to recognize it, it's not going to use the right IntelliSense. So if I start with the usual equals and then py, you'll see it comes up with a py or pi formula there. So I can click tab and then I can start entering my Python code. You can see you get a hint here. So in order to enter my formula, rather than just pressing enter, I have to use Control Enter, because if I just press enter, it creates another line of Python. That's the difference with Python and Excel. Generally, you are going to create more than one line once you get going. Our simple example, we're just doing single lines. So that's how you get into it there. So I'm just going to come out of that. And then the third method is to use the editor. So if we click on the editor here, at the moment I don't have any cells, so you get this image in the middle. You've got an option of how you select your cells. I like to use selected cells, so that's why I've got that one highlighted at the moment. So you can look at cells on all sheets, current sheet, or you can name the sheet. And you can look at all Python cells. You can zero in on your errors, see what problems you've got, or you can do selected Python cells. I find it easier to look at the one that I'm working on, so I tend to keep selected Python cells ticked. So for this challenge, so you can see a couple of the entry methods in action, what I'll do is I'll create the data frames by using the formula bar method, and I'll create the outer join and left anti-join by using the Python editor. You can use either of them for both outputs. It is possible to enter multiple lines in the formula bar, and it is possible to use the Python editor just to enter one line. It's not that I've got to use one or the other, it's just so you can see them all working. So let's get started. So before I do the first data frame, let's just close this down so we've got a bit more space to play with, and let's make sure that it's actually in the right place. So this is where I'm going to create my first data frame. So let's watch what happens when I make this a Python cell. So equal py or pi. So now you can see we've got this green py symbol at the beginning of the formula bar indicating that this is a Python cell that we're in. Notice these have also changed. I've still got my cross and tick, which I can use to commit the code. But I've also got this little symbol here which says Python object, and we'll look at this in a moment. So let's start by creating my data frame. Now when we create objects in Python, we generally like to give them names, variable names. So I'm going to begin by giving it a name, and the name I'm going to give it begins with df because I'm going to create a data frame. So I've called this df data range. Now what I could do now is continue typing the formula, and you'll see it's been recognized. So you can see I could tab on this to select this particular function, and I can see a little bit more about the function on here as well. But what I'm actually going to do, rather than start typing the function in, is I'm going to just go to the data that I want to extract. So I didn't bother putting a title in here because I knew I wasn't going to be using it in quite the same way. So I've just got the data on this one. So you can see as I'm selecting it, it's looking at the data I'm selecting. So I'm just going to get everything in cell F11 to F33. And I'm going to use the tick, or I could use Control Enter to commit it. So I'm going to use the tick. And there you go, I've created my first Python object. And now what this means is it's showing me the Python object. So here you go, I've got a data frame. If I want to know more about my data frame, I'm just going to scroll up a little bit. You can see that you've got a little card that comes up here that you can extract your data into a cell. I don't want to do it this way. Instead, if I click on this little py symbol at the beginning, you'll see that it gives me a little picture of the data frame so I can see what's in it. So I've got 22 rows, and it starts with socks and it ends with saddles. So that's all the data in my data frame. If I wanted to see that in my workbook, I could actually see that not as a table, but actually as a spilled range. So I'll just show you what happens. If I go from Python object to Excel value, and you can also see that when I change the output view, the Python editor opened as well. And now you can see it's spilling from cell N14, just like a dynamic array would. So if I click on something outside the original cell, you'll see that just like a dynamic array, the formula is still visible, but it's grayed out because I can't change it here. And this is just a normal dynamic array. So if I were to create something in this cell, then I'd create a spill error. So it's no different to a normal dynamic array in that sense once we've got the output. It takes a minute for it to recalculate again. So that's the first one. I'm not going to put it in this form because obviously it would take up a lot of space in the area where I'm creating my solutions, but that's how you'd see the data in your workbook. So I'm just going to go back to the cell with the formula, and I'm going to make it a Python object again. So I've got my first data frame. So now I'm going to create a data frame for table Excel data, and I'm going to do it in a similar way. I'm going to go into the cell where I want to create it, go to PY, create my Python cell, give it a name here. So the name I'm going to give it this time, the variable name, again begins with df. And this time I'll use table Excel data. And I put equals. And now I'm going to go and select that data, and you'll see it does something slightly different because of the way it's structured. Now the way I'm going to select it is to very slowly select everything so you can see what's happening. Obviously this isn't the way you do it if you were trying to do it as part of a task at work, but let's just watch what happens. So at the moment it's selected just the headers and the year. I could get it to select all the headers, or I can carry on down and get it to select cells instead. But what it's going to do when I get to the bottom is it's going to use the table formatting, and it says it's selected all from my table. And this time we've got this headers equals true that's appeared, and we do have headers on there, so we need this in this case because we do have a heading. So I could use the tick again to enter, but this time I'm going to use Control Enter. And now I've got my first two data frames. Let's just have a look at the data in this one. Again, I can click on this PY and I can see, pull this out at the bottom, I can see the data that I've got in this data frame. So I've got two data frames ready to merge. So now I'm going to click in the next cell, and this time I'm actually going to use the Python editor. So I'm going to create a Python cell in cell N17. Now just a few little pointers about using the Python editor rather than using the formula tab. You can actually just type in code, Python code here, and you can keep it and then go back to a cell in the Excel workbook and then come back here, and it's a lot more flexible than if you're trying to create it in the formula bar. Once you're ready, you do have the option to save your code in here, and as you can for the formula bar, you can change from Python object to Excel value view. You can make this a bit bigger if you want to create a few lines of code. I'll keep it small so it'll be easier for us to see. And it generally acts like a Python notebook if you're familiar with Python in other applications. So it will give you things like IntelliSense. It will color the different elements, different colors, so you can spot your Python objects. You can see the functionality that you've got if you enter a particular function. When we look at the example later where we're looking at Python and Excel with Power Query and doing a slightly more complex piece of Python code, we can have a look at some of those features then. But for now, let's start off with the code that I'm going to enter for this particular solution. So rather than try and enter it all from scratch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste the code in so you don't watch me creating a lot of different typos. So let's have a look at what we've created here. I've got the variable I've been using for everything else. So I can see my variable is df for data frame, and it's called df outer because I'm going to create an outer merge for this one. PD merge, we're talking about the pandas library, which from the initialize came in with the alias pandas. I can have a quick look at that now. So you can see when we got pandas in, it was given an alias PD. So that's why I refer to PD here. It makes it a bit easier to type. So if I just close this, we should see my one underneath. There we go. And then we're taking, now it's great that it gives you all these extra bits when you hover over things because you can see the functions, but it's making it quite hard for me to point at everything. So you can get more on the merge functionality. If you hover over that, you can see everything that you're allowed to do for that. You can also go and look at the Python documentation online because they have a lot of information about how to use all the functions. They're often very flexible, so there's a lot of different parameters you can use. So I'm taking table Excel data, which is my big table on the table data sheet. That's the data frame from that. Then I've got the data frame from my data range. It's asking me how to do the join, so I'm giving it an outer join, which means I'm going to get everything, and you'll see the reason for that in a moment. And we're joining on product. And this indicator is important because it's going to tell me whether the data exists only in the left-hand data frame, if it exists only in the right-hand data frame, or if it exists in both of the data frames. So I'm going to use the save here, and I'm going to commit this. You can see it's busy in the cell at the moment, and then it creates a data frame. And now I can show you another advantage with the Python editor. We can actually view the data frame in here. We don't just have to do it in the workbook or with the data type card. We can actually view it as we go along as well in here. You see I've got this merge at the end here where we've got both, and then occasionally we'll have left and we'll have right. It doesn't show everything in here because it's only showing you a sample of the data set, but that's going to be the important part that we look at for the final data frame that we're creating. So let's do the left anti-join now. And I'm calling this anti-join because that's the similar thing to what we would do if we were doing this in Power Query, so we can follow what's happening. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking df outer where the df outer final column that we looked at is left only. So that means it exists on our main table data, but it doesn't exist on this data range that we've got. So that's the information that we're looking for the solution. So again, I can save this. And it creates another data frame. And if we have a look at this data frame, there's a final step because this gives me this extra column at the end here, as you can see. And we don't want this on the final solution. I can just show you this actually in the workbook as well. So if we change this and we'll see what it looks like, this is why you don't want it. change this to Excel value and then save. I'll just move this across so we can see it. See, this is what we're actually getting at the end here. So we're getting this numeric, it doesn't even come back as a proper number. So it's going to look really bad on our reports. That's why we want to get rid of this column. We've also got a row number at the beginning, but we're not too worried about that one. But if we wanted to, we could drop that as well. But I'm choosing to drop the last part. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. So if I could change that back into a Python object and then save, I'm now ready to enter my final data frame. So this one's a bit simpler. As you can see, this is the solution data frame. So I'm taking my previous data frame, I'm picking up that column 0, if you remember that was the title, and I've said it's supposed to delete the column and not the row. So this is this could be set to columns or rows, but we're getting rid of that. So let's save this one. And now we're going to show this as an Excel value and save. So there you go, there's our answer for our Python challenge. Let's just check it's the same. So we've got 6 rows. We've got change, 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 helmets, helmets, helmets. We'll just see if it's the same one here. And there we can see change, 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 helmets, helmets, helmets. It's not in the same order, but we could do sorting to sort that out if we wanted to. I was just trying to keep it simple because we are getting quite close to running out of time. And I do want to show you one final example. So let's go back to the slides. So let's compare the results for our particular challenge. Now, do keep in mind that I have really done a simplified version of what Python can do there. It could not only do all that in one line of code, it could also do it lots of different ways. So it could use the list method as well. This was simply just to give you an idea of how they work differently. So let's have a look at some pros and cons of Power Query first. For the merge solution, there was no M code understanding required at all. You could simply use the user interface. A disadvantage of Power Query is that while you're working in the Power Query editor, you can't work in the workbook. Python, on the other hand, does require some coding knowledge, and Python code can be stored in the Python editor while you're working in other cells. So it depends how you need to work, which one you choose to use. And the output for Power Query is a table, whereas your Python data frames are displayed as dynamic arrays. So if you're comfortable using that, then that's all good. Now, do bear in mind as well, I've only scratched the surface, not only in terms of how Python could solve this particular example, but also what else Python could do. I was simply looking at it compared with performing this particular solution with how we do it with Power Query. Let's move on to looking at how Power Query and Python can work together. If you try to use Python and Excel to link directly to external data, that is external to the current workbook, then you will encounter errors. And we've got an example of one of the errors that you could encounter on the right-hand side here, where the file isn't found, even though it actually does exist in the same directory as your workbook. However, Python and Excel can access Power Query queries, and they can access external data. So that's how you link Python and Excel to external data. And then you can do your data cleansing either using the Power Query facilities or using Python, or a mixture of both. So let's have a look at that. So for this example, I've got some car sales data in a CSV file in the same directory as my workbook. So the first thing I'm going to do is use Power Query to just go and grab the data and put it in a connection-only query. So I'm going to use my text file icon, import car sales data CSV. So I'm just going to get that into Power Query and then perform any initial transformations I'd want to do close to the source. So when you're bringing data in, you might want to go to the View tab and just check the quality of the data. You've got a couple of things in here you can use. You've got your column profile, your column quality, which will vary on what it returns according to what your column is. I'm not going to use it for this example because I know my data is fine. But what I am going to do is apply a filter because we don't want to sit here for ages watching things process. So I'm just going to pick a few years out of this. We're still going to have quite a reasonable amount of data. So rather than selecting everything, I'll just do a few years on here and then click OK. So now I'm going to create this as a connection only query with close and load to. and only create connection. So there you go, I've got my car sales data query. So what I'm going to do now is create my data frame. So I'm going to start by making this a Python cell. And then I'm going to give it a variable name. I'll just keep it simple, df query. Then I need to enter my Python code, and I'm going to be using the Excel function. Come up with car sales data there, which you just about see underneath the other one. So I'll just tab to accept that. So now when I commit that, I've got my first data frame for this example. So my data frame's loaded now. Let's have a little look at the data type card. So you can see I've got quite a large data frame here, over 770,000 rows. Okay, so I've cheated slightly for this next bit because I've pre-created the Python code and I've created a couple more Python objects on here. So we've got our original data frame here, nice and simple, just getting the car sales data. And then we have the next data frame down. This one looks a little bit more complicated. And now you can see what I was talking about with the different colors for the different types of objects in here. So we've got green for the comments, and we've got this nice purple color for some of the keywords. We can see we've got other libraries being used here. So we've got sklearn, and we've got NumPy. So we've got different ones being used for this one. So this is our slightly more advanced version. What I'm doing here is I'm creating a linear regression model. So we can look at what the data type card for this looks like. So there we go. We've got our intercept, and we've got a sales price coefficient. So that's created my linear regression model. But of course, it's easier to see these things if you can actually look at them. So underneath, I've added some more Python code. And here we've got an image. Of course, you can't see much here. But how about if we actually create this as an image? So for this, I'm going to right-click. And then I'm going to display plot over cells. Now I think this, you'll agree, looks rather more impressive. There we go, we've created our, I'm just going to make this bigger so you can see it all. We'll do full screen mode for a moment. There we go, now you can see it. So you can see you've got a nice big chart of sales price versus commission, and with a regression line too. So I hope you agree that that was quite an impressive and quickly created image that we got from our initial data frame from Power Query. So let's go back and summarize what we've done. So just to summarize what we did in this session, we had an Excel challenge which we solved with Power Query, first using a merging method with the user interface, and then with a list method where we needed a little bit of M code. We then solved it with Python and Excel where we needed some more Python code to solve the challenge. We used pandas, and we used the merge functionality, and we used drop as well. But in reality, we'd use them together, particularly as Python and Excel doesn't read external data. So you'd read it in with Power Query, create a connection-only query, and then you take that and put it into a data frame. And you can then analyze that further with Python and Excel. And we created a nice visualization at the end there. So that's been my session. I hope you enjoyed it. I've been Kathryn Newitt, and that was an Excel challenge with Power Query and Python and Excel. So if you feel like you'd like to give some feedback on this session, you can either use the QR code on the screen or the link below. That's bit.ly EVG2025 feedback, and I hope to hear from you. Enjoy the rest of Excel Virtually Global 2025.